boy was trapped in an underground lab for 70 years, yet instead of salvation, he was subjected to cruel mutation experiments. Each experiment rewrote his human body, until finally, one day, he was transformed into a true monster, a chimera. All he possessed then were combat instincts and orders of absolute obedience. However, after experiencing death once, he actually returned to a human body. Am I a human again now? But I couldn't be considered a complete human, because I could still use the cellular abilities of a chimera. Furthermore, I discovered that the serial number on my arm had disappeared, which meant I had broken away from my past life. The reason I was able to be reborn was definitely due to an immortal type's ability they had previously implanted in me. This ability should work up to 3 times if its core isn't destroyed, but this was odd considering they said that immortal cells and human cells couldn't fuse. But it's apparent that my body is in its peak condition. I looked up at the setting sun on the distant horizon. To be honest, everything happened too long ago that the flames of vengeance no longer burn as fiercely as before. So, I don't plan on seeking revenge, but if I happen to run into them, I'll think about it when that time comes. For now, I want to continue living as a new human being. Soon, I arrived by a river. My immediate priority was to find some clothes to cover my body. Just then, I noticed a strange-looking creature. Right at my feet lay a bizarrely shaped bird with an extremely massive body. I saw some purple blood by its beak and blindly guessed it had died of poisoning. This would make for fine clothing material. The next moment, a sharp blade materialized on my arm, and I began thinking about how to cut open this big bird's downy feathers. My blade merely cut a slit in its body before I was enveloped by a burst of purple poison gas. However, this gas caused me absolutely no harm. I had long since become immune to such low-level poisons. I quickly peeled its skin off perfectly, then took it to the river to wash it. When I picked it up again, I found the leather was a bit too stiff and would definitely be uncomfortable to wear. A moment later, I thought of an excellent solution. I immediately laid the leather on the ground and constantly pounded it with my fist. I was giving it a processing treatment. Once done, it would be just like ordinary clothing. Before long, the garment was beaten soft by me. I then cut 2 holes in this leather for my shoulders to stick out, and a simple tunic made of top-tier material was complete. However, there was still remnants of poison inside. Turning my head, I saw that the bird was actually still alive. Its body had already stiffened. It was definitely dead earlier. Then I realized this creature must also be an immortal type. Moreover, this bird seemed unable to cause me any harm, so there's no reason to kill it now. So it was as lucky as I was, gaining a second life. Thus, I spared it and turned ahead into the forest. Now that the clothing issue was solved, the next step was to find shelter. Just then, a giant centipede appeared in front of me. It fiercely charged at me, but my mind was elsewhere. It's a little dark in here. With a flick of my right arm, I directly used my chimera ability to slice it into several segments. This shelter is rejected. Later, I arrived at a snowy mountain, but it was a vast expanse of white and completely unsuitable for me to live in. This shelter is rejected. Then I saw some strange mushrooms that emitted a rotten smell. This shelter is also rejected. There was also a very humid cave, also rejected, and an extremely hot location. This shelter is rejected as well. But finally, after days of searching, I arrived in front of a waterfall and found the scenery quite nice. I leaped up and jumped down the waterfall to look around a bit more. The moment I landed, the river water splashed high by my impact. Turning around, I saw the lake water behind me was incomparably clear, and there were quite a few fish inside. Seeing the sharp-toothed fish, I thought about how I could roast them for food. Considering the natural fish pond, this could be a good place to build a house. Furthermore, there were beautiful flowers, and the air was very fresh. I felt this place was fantastic, especially suitable for me to live. This shelter is approved. From now on, this is my home, Chio Du-woon's home. Meanwhile, in a clearing in an unknown place, the ground trembled slightly, followed by a flash of flowing light, and suddenly a teleportation portal appeared. With a bang, something seemed to fly out from inside. The figure slowly stood up, surrounded by lingering electricity. It wasn't a human or a monster, but a robot. Is this the demon realm? Meanwhile, it was now time to clear a site for the house. I swung my sleeve, and many threads emerged from my fingers, rushing forward. With just one strike, I severed the tree trunk slightly above the base. I found the ground here was just right, with a beautiful mountain in the distance for viewing. After selecting the spot, I began cutting the wood into small segments. Afterward, I found the ground a bit uneven, so with a casual wave, I swept away all the tree roots on the ground. In just a blink of an eye, I had cleared the place into an empty lot. It looked much more refreshing now. Subsequently, I prepared to plant the pillars of the house. I erected a wooden post in every corner and then laid some floorboards. Since there were no nails, I found some snail slime to use as an adhesive. Once the slime dried, it would firmly stick the wood together. I looked at the newly built house with great satisfaction. To anyone else, this was a scary sight, but I found it very cozy already. I thought carefully about what normal houses needed. I recalled some videos I had watched at the Research Institute that contained information about houses. In the lab videos, houses had an open space in front for playing, surrounded by lots of vegetation. Unfortunately, I can't raise a human world dog in the demon realm, so I planned to plant some vegetables in the open space, but this was the demon realm, so I didn't know if normal vegetables could grow. Just then, I thought of something. On a not too distant mountain covered in snow, know, there should be a plant called mandragora. The habitat of the mandragora is near the mountain peaks where mana is most dense in the snowy mountains. Seeing the snow reminded me of when I was kidnapped by the lab. It was so cold, I actually felt relieved to be kidnapped. Thinking about it now, becoming a chimera had its benefits. I didn't have to fear dying from cold or hunger. I glanced at the sky and noticed the concentration of mana seemed quite dense. It looked like I was getting close to my destination. As soon as I arrived, I saw the mandragoras, and there were many growing there. Mandragoras are short-lived monsters very fragile to stress. Even a slight environmental change can kill them. The ones picked to relocate are the young ones with strong adaptability. Just as I pulled one mandragora out, I immediately remembered that I needed to cover my ears. But when I turned the mandragora around, I discovered it actually had a cute face. I pulled out another one and found it was the same. I pulled out a third one, and it was also the same. I examined them carefully in my hand and found they were talking in their sleep. Normally, a mandragora would scream and die when forcibly pulled out in a stressful low-mana environment like the human world. I suspect the reason they aren't screaming now is possibly because we are in the demon realm, but I didn't understand why they didn't resist or flee. Do they treat me as one of their own since mandragora cells were once transplanted into my body? I casually stuffed them into my waist. Once they grow up, I'll use their roots to brew tea, and their fruits would make good snacks. However, if the fruit is forcibly picked, it produces deadly poison, so I have to persuade them. At this moment, I noticed hunters in the distance. Although I didn't know why they ran to such a dangerous snowy mountain, I was going to get the gate stone. Meanwhile, not far away, two people were facing danger. Look out, they're coming again. The rabbit-looking monsters began lunging at them with hostile intentions. Fortunately, the hunter immediately put up his defensive shield. However, he knew his mana was limited, and this shield absolutely wouldn't last long. The hunter regretted this job that required them to find the chimera. The next moment, with a bang, the shield was shattered by the rabbits. However, just then, a figure suddenly fell from above and smashed into the earth. At this moment, both the humans and the rabbits were attracted by the commotion. The dust slowly settled, and a figure emerged from within. It was me, calmly scanning the surroundings. Seeing my arrival, the rabbits were much more panicked. They understood that they were facing a formidable enemy. It's been a long time, you little rabbits. The aura I exuded startled all the rabbits, and they fled in panic. Remaining were the two hunters, who were incredibly shocked that B-rank monsters ran away immediately upon seeing me. They hurriedly got up to thank me and introduced themselves. One was named Osong-ju, and the other was Kim Tae-hoon. I also stated my name, Chio Do-woon. One of the hunters looked puzzled. It was his first time hearing the name Chio Do-woon, and judging by my attire, I seemed to be a reclusive hunter. I asked why there was a D-rank hunter in this extremely dangerous place. They stated it was all for money, having heard there was a high commission for catching a chimera. This startled me. Wasn't I the chimera? Were these guys going to capture me? A machine creature escaped from a lab, fleeing into a gate. Hearing this, it reassured me that I wasn't their target. I asked if they came to the demon realm empty-handed. Did you not bring the gate stone? Unfortunately, their group had abandoned them and took everything. Apparently, this was their group's plan from the start. The moment the rabbits appeared, their B-rank team members ran away immediately. They wondered what I was planning to do, because they were at the limit of their mana contamination, because the time that hunters could stay in the demon realm varied greatly by their awakening grade. If they didn't return to the human world to purify the mana in time, most would die, but I was an exception to this rule. Just then, I keenly picked up an aura behind me. I knew I had found the fleeing hunters from earlier. Instantly, I leaped up and flew directly into the air. Chio Do-woon, where are you going? Can you save us? But my figure got farther and farther away until it disappeared. Meanwhile, a robot was looking down from above. He carefully surveyed the forest and found it very dangerous. Behind the mechanical creature was a group of hunters, moving to attack simultaneously to capture their target. The mechanical creature's sensors picked up their presence immediately. The next moment, the mechanical creature turned quickly, already prepared to welcome the attack of the hunters. A moment later, I arrived at their location. I felt I was too late. Those hunters had long since run away, and abandoned luggage remained on the ground. However, there were footprints of a child and an animal on the ground. It must have changed its form. The hunter from earlier had mentioned this, that the experimental subject was made of liquid metal, which allowed it to freely change its form, but its size is limited due to the material's rarity. I didn't expect this mechanical creature to overwhelm 5 B-rank hunters alone. It seemed quite powerful. At the foot of the mountain, Osong-ju could hardly hold on anymore. His whole body was polluted by mana. Your child is being born next month. If you don't go back, won't you leave a regret? However, just then, Kim Tae-hoon heard a footstep nearby, and his expression changed. He looked ahead in disbelief. He saw me slowly walking towards them carrying their luggage. Kim Tae-hoon flew to my side. He knelt down and begged me to save them with the gate stone. I looked at him with a confused expression. The man knelt on the ground, taking out all the money on him, begging me to sell him the gate stone to go back. Although I didn't need it now, 20 million would indeed be useful when I returned to the human world later. So, I activated the gate stone. Immediately a teleportation portal appeared in front of us. The man said he would never forget my kindness. Just as he went to pick up his partner to go back, I fell into deep thought looking at the 20 million. So I asked him, a human world gate stone is about $200 500,000, right? But he said that the prices have soared to around 1 million now. Hearing this, I slowly moved my hand closer. You've been very generous. Then I'll give you this as change for the 20 million. The next moment, I transferred the mana from my body into his. Kim Tae-hoon was greatly shocked. He didn't expect that I could transfer mana. This was something even A-rank hunters were unwilling to do. If mana conflicted or got entangled, the mana core would be destroyed and both people would die. But to Oh Sung-ju's surprise, his contaminated mana was completely purified. Meanwhile, Kim Tae-hoon could not believe his eyes as Oh Sung-ju celebrated. He even bowed all the way to the ground, saying he'll never forget this favor. After sending the two of them off, I returned to the camp. Seeing the house exactly as I left it, I knew there had been no intruders. Seeing the drooping leaves, it was clearly time to plant the mandragoras. Soon, I cleared a patch of ground and buried them all in, but the three of them seemed to express great dissatisfaction. It seemed they weren't quite used to the change of residence. So, I channeled some mana from my fingertips to them, wondering if they would cheer up. Just as I guessed, after absorbing my magic, they were revitalized. Just then, I heard a movement behind me. It seemed to be the creature that the hunters were chasing, but I wondered what business he had with me. I placed the 20 million I just got in the door crack, then poured out everything from the backpack to see if there was anything I needed. Inside, I found a portable stove, which is an essential item for the outdoors. There were 8 gate stones. There were also spare clothes and 2 sleeping bags. What surprised me most was that there were actually instant noodles inside. I had only eaten this stuff when I was a child. Seeing this, and being hungry, I prepared to have a simple meal on the spot. So I went to the river to get some water. But just then, 2 fish suddenly leaped out. People usually add ingredients to instant noodles, so these fish would pair perfectly well with it. Then I found 2 bird eggs in a tree. There were no green onions in the demon realm, so I planned to find a few random leaves to toss in and make do. This whole scene was watched by the mechanical creature in the bushes, but even the mechanical creature seemed like it was hungry. I had prepared the basic things. Next was to start a fire to cook it. In a short while, I built a table and cooked the instant noodles on it. The aroma wafted over to the mandragoras, but they expressed that it smelled terrible and couldn't stand the smell at all. But to the mechanical creature's nose, the smell felt incredibly delicious. As the mechanical creature walked forward, the next moment, its leg actually turned into a furry leg. Back at the lab, the mechanical creature had found out that humans like dogs, and he might get food by acting pitiful. The mechanical creature whimpered to get my attention, but I already knew it was following me. Seeing its appearance, I immediately understood it wanted to pretend to be a dog so it could take advantage of my sympathy. However, in my eyes, he was no different from a young child. How did he escape the laboratory and come all the way to the demon realm? I've cooked the noodles. Do you want to eat too? It barked cooperatively. The food inside the pot had a menacing aura, but both of us still looked at it with anticipation. Shall we try eating it? Soon, the two of us were eating this delicious food, but as we ate, the mechanical creature felt something was wrong. Meanwhile, I recalled the time before I was kidnapped, a time where I also had instant noodles. Because of this memory, I remembered how it should have tasted. However, in reality, this memory was so intense that the foul smell was erased. To the side, the mandragoras were all too sensitive at the odor. After the meal, I told the dog to leave quickly because I had to clean up. However, looking at his limping leg, I was curious. I remember you were limping on your left leg just now. It then pretended nothing was wrong and switched to the left leg. Watching this, I just felt a burst of amusement. After washing the bowls, I started washing clothes. I slowly brought down the wooden stick in my hand, daring not to use too much force. But unexpectedly, I still hammered the clothes to shreds. Not only that, but I also smashed a small pit in the ground. This was disappointing, but fortunately, there was another set of clothes in my backpack. Just then, my gaze keenly caught something moving behind me. Turning around, I saw the mechanical creature had turned into a rock. Earlier, it had turned into a piranha watching me do the dishes. When I was admiring the flowers, it changed form to approach me as well. At that time, a bee landed on its nose, scaring it into reverting to its original form and running away continuously. From how it has acted, its mental age seemed to be only 5 years old. The way it spoke was mechanical and clumsy, which was a common side effect in young chimeras, since knowledge is forcible injected into them. I coughed dryly and immediately turned my head, praising the flower for being beautiful, while he hurriedly hid. Soon I finished washing the clothes. I didn't expect washing clothes to be so difficult. Although I lost one piece of clothing, fortunately, I managed to save one. Subsequently, I hung the clothes up to dry and then prepared to check on the mandragoras. This scene was also watched by the mechanical creature. Suddenly, the mechanical creature came under where I hung the clothes. Seeing the clothes I wore, it felt it should wear clothes too. The next moment, the white shirt was beautifully worn on its body, and a mechanical laugh came from its mouth, claiming the shirt for itself. Gradually, hair grew on its head, and its arms changed from mechanical arms to a child's hands. With a shake of its body, it actually transformed into a little girl. Meanwhile, I had went to the vegetable garden and saw the mandragoras with painful expressions, which made me very confused as to why this was happening. So I dug the ground a few times with a shovel, and I found there were many bugs inside. I quickly dug the bugs out of the ground. I sized up the vegetable patch and planned to make a small vegetable garden today, about the size of my house. But just then, a little girl called out, half hid hid behind a tree, greeting me tremblingly. I was surprised that the mechanical creature now took the form of a little girl. Hello to you as well. Did you build this house, mister? I nodded proudly. Uncle, are you a native here? Hearing this, I planned to tease this mechanical creature, so I admitted I was a native here and asked which tribe she belonged to. Frantically, she pointed to the distant waterfall. My tribe is in the direction of the waterfall, very far away. So far you can't find it. I quickly replied. Then are you from the coconut tribe near the waterfall? I am from the coconut tribe. That's right, but it seems like you stole my clothes. In our tribe, there is an unwritten rule, which is whoever finds it owns it. Now this clothing is mine. Alright, you can have it. The little girl lied that she was kicked out by the tribe, so she had a request. She hoped I could take her in. She seemed to have used all her courage to say this. The reason the little girl wanted to live here was that there were no bugs, and there was a house to live in, so in her eyes, this place was very safe. So she wanted to live here. I realized that this mechanical creature just wanted to find a place to rest. In the end, I agreed to let her stay, but there was one condition. She must do her share of work. But the little girl was overjoyed, eager to do anything she was asked of. First, help me make a small vegetable patch first. I need to give the mandragoras a new home. She immediately took the wooden stick from my hand. The next moment, with confidence in her strength, she held a stick against the ground and constantly charged forward. It seemed that she didn't plan to hide her identity at all. What child would have such strength? But thinking about its origin in the lab, it wouldn't even know what a normal child is like. By the way, I'm Cheon Duun. What's your name? Just then, the little girl froze because she did not have a name. But recalling the flowers from earlier, she decided on a name on the spot. Kimnari. My name is Kimnari. Soon, the vegetable garden was finally done, with the stone's fence placed up by me. The mandragoras were very satisfied seeing their new home and hopped around playing. Just then, I glanced at Kimnari. She was suddenly crying because the mandragoras reminded her of her friends. But I wondered what she could mean, because it's highly unlikely for her to have any friends inside the lab. However, at this moment, Kimnari's pupils dilated violently. She sensed a very terrifying aura coming towards her. She collapsed to the ground, but I told her not to be afraid. It was the sound of monsters hunting each other. This was very common here. Actually, before coming to me, Kimnari saw a monster that looked like a chick, surrounded and beaten by several monsters. I looked into the distance and carefully sensed it, and it seemed like that was indeed the case. Kimnari felt that the chick seemed to be in pain. It must be hurting, and this is the demon realm after all. It should be eaten soon. Suddenly, I asked her, do you want to save that monster? Kimnari's mind struggled intensely. The brainwashing command was still preventing her from saving the monster. Seeing this, I immediately crouched down. If you go there to help, maybe that little bird still has a chance to survive. Hearing these words, Kimnari's figure instantly flew into the air, claiming she'd be back soon. Meanwhile, on the other side, a group of monsters was besieging the chick. This chick obviously had no combat power. It seemed to have just hatched. Suddenly, the head of the leading monster was kicked off. Little chick, don't be afraid. I'm coming to save you. Kimnari recalled the past at the lab. It turns out that her success was resented by the others, worried that they might be labeled as failures as consequence. Her favorite doll was even torn apart by them. Not only that, but others also ganged up on her. She could not understand. It merely obeyed orders, so why was it bullied by others? So seeing the chick this time felt like seeing her past self. The next moment, Kimnari charged out fiercely, gathering very powerful strength in her palm. It's a bad thing for many people to gang up on one person. With a crash, the monsters bullying the chick were all shattered. Meanwhile, I was feeding the mandragoras with my own magic. Turning my head, I discovered Kimnari had returned. This little chick seems to be dying. It has been unconscious all this time. I looked at the chick in her arms and instantly felt it looked familiar. This was actually the fire bird I found when I first arrived here. But why did it become a small bird? Although the body size had changed, I absolutely couldn't be mistaken. I immediately stepped forward to check. I slowly extended my hand, and mana wrapped around my palm. Although I could feel he suffered some serious injuries, fortunately, none were fatal. Each monster's mana contains is a unique history, and I can see some memory fragments from it. This was indeed the immortal type monster I encountered earlier. After pouring some magic into its body, I let go. It was no longer in life-threatening danger, but I still didn't understand why it became so small. Perhaps its regeneration method was different from mine. Kimnari asked if it was dying, but I reassured her that it was just a bit malnourished. It had shrunk and couldn't get enough food. Hearing my words, Kimnari relaxed a lot. I had infused a lot of magic into it just now, so it should recover soon. Kimnari recalled the toy in her hand before. That chick was her favorite toy, but it was torn apart by the bullies. Looking at the chick in her hand, she was still a bit worried the bird would die. She wanted this chick to live here like her, and she would take care, train, and feed it daily. You know this little bird will become very big when it grows up, and its appetite will get bigger too, but she still reassured me that she can handle it. Hearing this, I agreed, and she was full of joy. I even suggested to let the chick guard the house. Meanwhile, the chick slowly opened its eyes. It was still wondering where it was. Seeing the figure before its eyes, it immediately recognized me as the human that took its skin. Thinking of this, it widened its eyes with a cooing sound. Realizing this, it was extremely shocked at the situation. Suddenly, Kimnari raised the chick in celebration because it had made a noise. Meanwhile, the chick was further confused as to why there's a girl in the demon realm. Kimnari nuzzled the chick after seeing it come alive, almost strangling it to death. The next moment, the chick screamed frantically, telling Kimnari to let go quickly. This time it was my turn to be shocked. I didn't expect I could understand the chick's words clearly. Later, Kimnari bandaged the chick, claiming the treatment was finally done. She had given the chick the name Coo because it cooed like pigeon. How can you casually give me a name without asking? I had a name originally, okay, but thinking Coo was thirsty, Kimnari poured a basin of water on him. It seemed Kimnari couldn't hear Coo speaking. Meanwhile, I prepared to collect wood to make a storage cabinet. I measured the dimensions and next prepared to cut the wood. With a crack, before I used much force, the wood was cut in two. This puzzled me greatly. I clearly followed the steps for making tables and chairs, but it still broke this time. What a fool. The wood colors are different. You picked softwood just now. Of course, it broke when cut. After listening to Coo's explanation, I finally understood that the wood type carries in strength. But how can I distinguish which wood is harder? Of course, the red ones are harder. But at the same time, Coo wondered if I could understand him. Hearing it say redwood was harder, I prepared to find some redwood to try. Suddenly, Coo stood up. It had its doubts, but still decided to use telepathy to read my mind. When its telepathy touched my mind, it was blocked by my own power. Coo was truly startled in its heart. I actually instantly blocked its telepathy. Human, can you hear me? It's not that I can hear you. It's more like the words just pop into my head. But what surprised me, however, was that it could understand our human language. Then I realized Coo might be an ultra-rare intelligent monster possessing extremely high IQ. It was my first time seeing an intelligent monster in person. I asked if he remembered me. Coo confirmed that this was the case and had wanted to see me. Although you skinned me back then, you had removed the poison and saved me. I thought if I saw you again one day, I must help you once. Then I asked if he could help me find some red wood. The next moment, Coo grinned in satisfaction. Let me take you to where the red trees grow. Meanwhile, Kimnari was being chased by a ball of fire. She constantly told the person behind her not to chase her. I hate the lab. Go away. Kimnari slipped as the fireball smashed into the mountain ahead of her. Kimnari never expected that after only a few peaceful days, people from the lab came to find her. She feared nothing but fire, and she hated fire especially. No doubt about it, that's the mechanical creature. It doesn't feel great attacking a child, but I hope you understand. My life is also on the line here. Suddenly, flaming claws rushed towards Kimnari. This scared Kimnari pale. She was really done for this time. But at that moment, I had stepped in to block the flaming attack. I'll tell you the location of the red trees later. For now, saving this kid comes first. I didn't expect that Kimnari actually feared fire, and she didn't seem mentally stable either. We'll put out the fire first. Kimnari, Coo added, actually bullying a brat. You really are a big villain. The hunter thought I was also targeting the mechanical creature. He told me to leave while I still can, but I instantly cut him off. You talk too much. This completely enraged the hunter. You're a cocky bastard. The next moment, his hands fell, and a great deal of firepower erupted from his palms heading straight for me. However, I had no intention of dodging at all, very calmly extending a finger. Immediately, a laser burst from my finger, and the stone wall above the man suddenly shattered. This startled him, frozen in confusion, but soon his face changed drastically, fearing the oncoming rocks. Having dealt with the hunter, I asked Kimnari if she was okay. Uncle put out the fire just now, so I'm not afraid. Kimnari, in the future, when you encounter things that scare you, you must knock out the fear itself. Just then, I prepared to pick this guy up and beat him again, but suddenly, his hair was the only thing in my hands. This stunned me for a moment. The man in front of me was actually bald. This bald uncle is really so funny. I fell into deep thought watching Kimnari. That guy shouldn't be any match for her. It turns out that at that time, Coo used telepathy to probe Kimnari and roughly knew what happened. Coo also shared all the memories it probed with me. The image showed someone in the lab laughing at Kimnari. That person was a member of the lab. He became increasingly satisfied with his creation because the liquid body he researched seemed to have self-awareness and generated fear within its consciousness. And that researcher was a fire attribute ability user, and he tortured Kimnari with his ability every day. I immediately stepped forward and patted her head, telling her she did a good job. I asked Kimnari how should we deal with this guy. Kimnari had a very good idea, so we left this bald guy for her to handle. A moment later, the bald guy was hung by Kimnari on a cliff, his body subjected to the waterfall's impact. Kimnari felt the bald guy was a fire attribute ability user, and only by hanging him above the waterfall could the fire be extinguished, so she wouldn't be afraid. You are a bad bald uncle. Seeing this, I was somehow relieved that she may get better faster than I thought. At this time, Coo was a bit puzzled, asking why I went to the river to get water. I told him it was for the instant noodles later on. Kimnari was incredibly delighted, telling Coo that they were very delicious. The bald guy hanging on the waterfall stared at me dead on. He could sense I must be an S-rank hunter or above. He felt I seemed to be hiding my strength. He suspected I should be a reclusive hunter working off the grid, but he still felt hanging him up to watch us eat instant noodles was a bit inappropriate. Soon, Kimnari caught 3 piranhas. The sight of us making instant noodles was fully seen by the bald guy above. What the hell is this? They actually cook the monsters directly. Don't they think it's very fishy? And why is there so much water? He wondered if we even knew how to properly cook instant noodles. Please let me down. I'll cook the instant instant ramen myself for all of you." At this moment, the bald guy was at the table, preparing to make the instant noodles. To some, this might just be a bowl of ordinary instant noodles, but to the bald guy, it could mean life or death. Since ancient times, instant noodles rely on a sincere heart. All he needed to do was stick to what he knew. At this time, he needed to cook 3 servings worth. He added the noodles in the soup base into the boiling water. Next, he cooked it for exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds. His heart rate was a steady 60 beats per minute. So after 270 heartbeats, he knew it was the perfect timing. Listening to his heart, he counted the beats, but at 200, he scooped the noodles to shower it in the air. This was the crucial step, to expose noodles to air to achieve a chewy texture. He knew he could have done better with kimchi, but this was the best he could make in the demon realm. I have no regrets at all. A basin of fragrant instant noodles was served on the table. Everyone's expression was slightly surprised. I calmly picked up a chopstick to taste it. Then there was silence. The scene seemed frozen. The next moment, a lightning bolt flashed through the minds of the 3 of us. This taste was simply explosively delicious. It was the taste of sincerity. "Uncle, this taste is truly too delicious. I really envy you humans being able to eat such delicacies every day." Actually, I was also surprised. I hadn't eaten such delicious food before either. After a full meal, Kool lay satisfied on the table. At this time, the bald guy came over to ask me how the taste was, but instead I replied, "Bald guy, name your price." However, my words confused him a bit. "You made it so delicious that I'm a bit embarrassed to eat it for free. So if you have anything you want to ask for, just say it. As long as I can do it, I will satisfy you." This made the bald guy swallow a mouthful of saliva. "Please teach me. My name is Nam Jiuk, and I want to be strong like you." "What are you talking about? And what do you want me to teach you?" He felt I was the strongest hunter he had ever seen. Then Nam Jiuk shouted loudly that he could cook other dishes and had certificates, but this was a lie. Then he continued he could make great fried chicken, which was true. He volunteered to be our runner, that he would get us supplies and clothes from the human world as we needed. He was even willing to pay for the lessons. He wanted to train under me and rank up to A rank. However, before I answered, I had a question to ask him. Did he attack Himnari for the bounty? Immediately, Nam Jiuk revealed eyes full of grievance. This was his private reason, so he couldn't say, but he swore that attacking Himnari was absolutely not for the bounty. As long as he could pass the hunter promotion exam, nothing else mattered. "In that case, I accept you as my disciple." After a good meal, next comes a good sparring session. Hearing this, Himnari shouted excitedly, "I also want to spar with bald uncle. I want to knock out my fear. I want to try putting out the fire myself. You were beaten to tears by me before. You haven't forgotten so quickly, have you?" Just then, I pointed to a stone not far away, wanting to test if Nam Jiuk could shatter that stone. Nam Jiuk recognized it at a glance as obsidianite. Its hardness is several times higher than diamond. He hurriedly expressed he couldn't do it. After all, obsidianite is very hard to break. At least an A-rank person could do it. However, as soon as his voice fell, the obsidianite behind him exploded. This filled Nam Jiuk's face with shock, practically unable to believe his eyes. The person who acted was Himnari. "Bald uncle, please come and spar with me." It turns out that Nam Jiuk used to be a hunter with a bright future. He awakened his ability at the age of 8, which was an exceptionally rare case. Later, he participated in the hunter exam and reached B-rank hunter status before he was 20. The explosive growth and ensuing fame were a very satisfying period for Nam Jiuk, who longed to be a top hunter. However, he had a great shortcoming as well, a shortcoming that came far too early. At the age most people start awakening, he started balding. He was only in his early 20s, but the top of his head was already hairless. Afterward, he went to many hospitals, but it could never be cured. Even implants would fall out. In that moment, he cried because the doctor said no matter what he did, he wouldn't grow hair again. He used to be more dazzling than anyone, with handsome looks and natural talent, but this empty fame was not worth mentioning compared to his hair. Afterward, his hunter career stagnated. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't step into the ranks of A-rank hunters, until one day, he was watching a broadcast in his living room. The program featured Dr. Han Myung-do from the Hanbit Institute. They were talking about the rare liquid metal substance in the demon realm, and when it spilled on his head, his hair had grown back. He didn't believe it at first, thinking this doctor was talking nonsense, but then the doctor said that the liquid metal wasn't meant to be used for hair loss. Why not make hair loss cream? That product would actually help humanity. Later, he saw a news item online that the mechanical creature researched by that doctor had escaped to the demon realm. Instantly, he decided to go to the demon realm. He'll be sure to find it and dump it on his head. Then finally he can grow his hair again. But now, unexpectedly, he was defeated so easily by the mechanical creature. After Himnari won the match, she laughed loudly on the side. Meanwhile, I finally built a cabinet according to Ku's recommendation. I looked over and was surprised at Nam Jiuk's persistence. He was beaten up all day, but still, why did it seem like he was so full of energy? Just then, Nam Jiuk called out to Himnari for one more match. Ku acknowledged Nam Jiuk's flame ability, but still, Himnari was above average as well. Nam Jiuk rushed towards Himnari with flying speed. Immediately, Nam Jiuk used a fire attack, but it was like hitting a mass of liquid. Just when Nam Jiuk thought he had succeeded, a liquid figure arrived in front of him. With a thud, Kim Nari kicked Nam Jiuk on the forehead. The power of this kick was tremendous. Nam Jiuk was kicked and sent flying away. I'm not scared of fire anymore. This is all thanks to you, uncle. Meanwhile, Nam Jiuk felt like this was his limit as a lifelong B-rank hunter. However, he slowly stood up. He had to persist. With such a good sparring partner here now, he couldn't waste it. So Nam Jiuk stood up again. He was originally this kind of person, a man who didn't know how to give up. Just as Nam Jiuk prepared to challenge again, he found his nose was bleeding. I asked him how many days he had been in the demon realm. He said it's been about 9 days. So I told him to go back first, otherwise, the mana contamination would kill him. But still, I think you've got the potential to become an A rank. Be sure to give it your all. Nam Jiuk was still a bit depressed about this. He had failed the A rank exam for 6 consecutive years. Apparently, if you fail the rank test for over 3 years, there was no hope. However, I felt he could pass the A rank exam because I sensed his mana core still had room for growth, so I told him not to give up. Nam Jiuk opened the teleportation portal to head to the human world, promising to bring more delicious food next time he came. He reminded Kim Nari to train well, or she would definitely be beaten by him next time. Meanwhile, Ku was staring at Nam Jiuk thoughtfully. After Nam Jiuk left, Ku turned to ask if I was so assured about Nam Jiuk. If that bald guy betrayed us, he could bring many hunters to catch Kim Nari next time. But I returned his question, claiming that he was the one that could read memories. Previously, Ku had indeed read Nam Jiuk's memory and found everything he said was true. I said that was enough. As long as he was sincere, he was worth investing in. After everything calmed down, we returned to that small hut. Kim Nari felt the room was good, but a bit dark. Instantly, my arm turned into a blade and cut a window into the wall. Then I saw Kim Nari turn into a chainsaw and cut the wood next to it too. The next moment, she hopped around happily. She had also learned to open windows, but even with a window, it would still become dark at night, so I felt we needed a light. In my memory, the demon realm has something called glowstone, a stone that can glow in dark places. Picking up a few to hang on the ceiling would make it bright, and this thing only appears in volcanic zones. The volcanic zone was a famously dangerous area, and the volcanic zone was also Ku's hometown. Kim Nari pinched Ku's face, asking me what he said. She felt Ku seemed very sad just now and asked if I had a way to make Ku happier. I stated he was just worried it would be dangerous for us to go to the volcanic zone, so I decided to go alone while they stayed here to watch the house. But Kim Nari wanted to go very much, and she said she wasn't afraid of fire anymore. Maybe she could help me there. Ku also wanted to visit its hometown because it had some business to do there. I agreed and prepared some necessary equipment. It is said that deep in the volcanic zone live some very powerful monsters. Just stepping onto the edge of the volcano would cause burns. Yet the little girl played with magma in the center of the volcano. That girl is a mechanical creature, so this would be nothing for her. But how are you okay? Just what are you? I answered honestly. I was a Chimera hunter. Due to being reborn once, I turned back into a human. I asked Ku in return if he was alright with our presence. To my relief, he said he enjoyed talking with us. After Kim Nari came up, we headed to the depths of the volcanic zone. Kim Nari saw the volcanic peak ahead. She ran over quickly and stood on top, celebrating the summit. I, however, noticed many glowstones on the wall below. But below, I saw 2 fire toads. That fire toad was crying loudly. Only then did Kim Nari notice there was a black fire toad in front of the fire toad. It was a dead fire toad. It must have been its mother. It's even carrying eggs on her back. Ku knew that those are freshly laid eggs on her back. But in this situation, it seems she died while relocating, and in this temperature, those eggs won't survive either. This fire toad was not only sad about its mother's death, but also about the brothers and sisters on her back. Just then, I took action. I jumped down and planned to help the fire toad leave here. With a thud, I landed steadily on the ground. The fire toad turned its head, feeling this person came with ill intent. Ku above told me absolutely not to approach it because the current fire toad was in a very sensitive stage. The fire toad began to gather power in its mouth. The next moment, a flame erupted from its mouth. However, my finger pierced through the flames. The next second, I pressed my finger on the fire toad's head. This fire toad collapsed directly to the ground without even struggling. This was because I had the paralysis toxin of the Nika cobra in my body. I only put a little bit so it could get knocked out. I told Kim Nari above to wait for me, and that everything was fine now. Fortunately, I have fire toad cells inside me, so I could transfer them. But unfortunately, the dead ones can't be cured. Subsequently, I removed the mother toad's ovary and tied it to the fire toad's body. As I finished up the procedure, the fire toad woke up to see the eggs on its back now. Suddenly, it crawled to the mother toad's side and rubbed against her with its head. It was saying its final goodbye to its mother. Then the fire toad's claws exerted slight force, and immediately it leaped up high in the sky. With just one jump, it came from below to behind Kim Nari. Before this fire toad left, it turned its head to look at us. When Kim Nari met its eyes, she clearly felt the other party seemed to express gratitude. Finally, it jumped away with its siblings on its back. Kim Nari exclaimed, "I understood the fire toad just now. It seemed to be saying thank you." To me, it seems the monsters in the demon realm have quite high IQs, able to express emotions to outsiders. A moment later, I told Kim Nari to come down and pick some glowstones so we could go back. Success Successfully, she was able to pull one out. I told Chimera to be careful. If she dropped one on her foot, it would hurt. Meanwhile, Ku was also helping us mine glowstones, but I saw he seemed very tired. Apparently it was because he had less energy due to his size. I told him it's alright for him not to help, since he had his own errands to run, especially since he had brought gifts for his friends. We are monsters. How can monsters have friends? I don't want to see them. I'll just put the gifts on the ground. I lamented that he actually missed his kin. It seems intelligent monsters are indeed different. However, I was curious why Ku wanted to leave his group. There were good things about gaining intelligence, but apparently there were also bad things. He was the only one that knew language. Everyone else was primal beings. This loneliness is what made him leave his group. Just then, Ku tried to pull out another glowstone, but it didn't want to budge. But when he did pull it out, the stone broke away from his claws and fell to the ground. With a crack, Chimera found that there was a monster egg on the ground. There was a crack on top, likely because of the fallen glowstone. A normal eggshell should be broken by the baby from the inside to come out. Only then will it grow healthily. Chimera wanted to take it back. After all, leaving it here might turn it into a roasted egg, but this was opposed by Ku. Meanwhile, I already thought of the perfect place to put the egg inside of, the new cabinet, so we decided to take this egg back, completely ignoring Ku's opposing opinion. After all, fundamentally, this egg was smashed by Ku, so we had to take responsibility. Meanwhile, Ku was just worried if Chimera gets in danger, but with me here, I guaranteed no danger would occur. When we returned, it was already the morning of the second day. As soon as we arrived, we found Nam Jiuk here, but I noticed this guy's expression seemed a bit off. I handed the heavy pack of glowstones to him. However, the next moment he was stunned. He didn't expect this package to be so heavy. At this time, I told Nam Jiuk to lift his head, because it seemed like he was beaten up. Meanwhile, at the crater, a bag of noodles was placed there. Several firebirds looking just like Ku gathered around with curiosity, but after eating the instant noodles, they cooed happily and danced with joy. I didn't expect him to be the type to get beaten up. However, he changed the subject and went to prepare food for us. A moment later, I polished the glowstone I brought back with my blade. Chimera asked curiously what I was making, and I told her it was a glowstone lamp. I was going to hang it from the ceiling, so I wanted to make it look pretty. Hearing this, Chimera was amazed, feeling I knew so much, was especially smart, and besides that, was especially kind. At this moment, in Chimera's eyes, I was as great as a father. How is your father and the coconut tribe doing? Don't you plan to visit? Eventually, evening came. At this time, Ku was lying in the soil resting. It wasn't as hot here as the volcanic zone, but his body was about to melt. Just then, the mandragoras in the ground stood behind Ku. The three little ones stacked together. Then their eyes became incomparably fierce. The next moment, the top mandragora suddenly jumped out, then unleashed the mandragora's killer move. However, the mandragora simply bounced off. Chimera on the side didn't understand why they were quarreling. I explained to her that Ku infringed on their territory first, so they were angry. Soon, Nam Jiuk served a plate of heartfelt tofu pockets. This dish is easy to make but still looks impressive. He waved his big hand telling us to eat quickly, or it wouldn't taste as good when cold. However, before eating, I still wanted Nam Jiuk to answer the question I asked him earlier. What happened to his face? Nam Jiuk found it hard to speak. It turns out that after returning to the human world, he met A-rank hunters when he went to the Hunter Association to apply for the exam. Those A-rank hunters first mocked him, then beat him up, saying he shouldn't muddy the waters of the A-rank. They started by mocking Nam Jiuk about losing hair, and after his self-esteem was hurt, he was provoked by them. Didn't you shave your hair? You're not completely bald? Nam Jiuk suddenly went into a serious monologue about hair loss and his baldness, and apparently, the promotion exam was in 60 days. Hearing this, I told him it was time for special training. To save Nam Jiuk's training time, Chimera would wash the dishes these days, and the first task I gave him was to wash the glowstones in my backpack. This stunned him. He thought it would be some special training. Then I told Chimera to go fishing with me. Nam Jiuk felt very helpless inside, but he felt that I had a reason for this. He then picked up the heavy bag of glowstones, and he was determined to obey my orders, because Nam Jiuk is a man who clawed his way up to B-class through effort and hard work. Nam Jiuk was a man of diligence and perseverance, a man who was loyal till the end. He kept encouraging himself as he walked into the forest. Meanwhile, Chimera and I were fishing by the river, but we were catching nothing. On the contrary, Nam Jiuk over there was constantly targeted by some piranhas. Hearing his complaints, I thought to myself that this guy needed so much supervision, so I went to his side to give him some guidance. You could have made a shield with your mana. However, despite his practice, he said it wasn't going so well. Hearing this, I picked up a glowstone from the backpack. I told him to hold the stone with all his strength, but just as he took the stone, a stream of magic emanated. The mana from the glowstone. It made him unable to put strength in his arms, and I informed him that glowstones contained condensed mana. Mana from the demon realm is raw, unrefined power, so one must push away the mana with refined magic to use strength. The mana in his body was already very sufficient. He just didn't know how to use it. The next moment, my finger tapped heavily on his shoulders, opening up mana infusion channels for him. Follow that path and channel your mana through it. Immediately, he bent down without hesitation and grabbed the glowstone on the ground. ground. He greatly struggled against the glowstone, putting extreme force into it. The next moment, he successfully held the glowstone high, so everything really was for a reason. It was all for my mana training, and now he would gladly clean all of the dishes in the future. Time passed quickly, and evening arrived. A polished glowstone was hung by me on the roof, so the room was relatively bright. Nam Jiuk was talking in his sleep on the side. Ku was sleeping in the drawer, holding the egg he smashed in his arms. But just then, it opened its eyes violently. Looking closely, it found Kimnari had stood up at some point, not knowing where this little girl wanted to go so late. At this moment, Kimnari was standing in the river. Kimnari was very sad because her clothes were tattered, dirty, and old. Still, she tried washing the clothes that I had given her. It turns out that, as a child, she didn't have anything else to change into. It seemed like I have neglected of her needs. Soon Kimnari smiled sweetly. The clothes were finally washed clean, and the stains were gone. At this time, I walked out nonchalantly from behind a tree, startling Kimnari. I said that Ku and I were out for a walk. Then I told Kimnari not to move, and I tied a rope around her, then tucked Kimnari's favorite flower into the waist. Kimnari looked incredibly happy, feeling her clothes had been elevated. She even said that now our clothes were matching. Just then, a rustling sound came from the bushes behind, startling Kimnari. She hurriedly asked me what that noise was. I chuckled, telling her not to worry. It was just a grasshopper, the steel locust, a B-class monster. By the way, Kimnari, is there anything you need, like clothes or shoes, for instance? But you already gave me some, mister, and I really like this one. Alright, if you say so. Although Kimnari said she didn't need them, I still plan to go buy her some clothes. It's not right for her to only have one set that doesn't even fit. I originally intended to bring Kimnari to the human world to buy clothes together, but the trauma of the human world might still be too much to handle. I remember there was a shop nearby specializing in children's clothes, but I couldn't remember the exact location clearly. At this time, a hand tugged at my sleeve, asking if I was looking for a clothing store. He stated that as long as I was willing to pay 10,000, he could take me to the best clothing store here. I nodded and said okay, but I didn't have change to give him now. I would pay him when I got change. The man sighed, thinking I was really pitiful. After a trip to the demon realm, I didn't even have 10,000. Reluctantly, he still told me to follow him to the store. I chuckled, feeling this little guy was quite interesting. His name was apparently Obansu, and I introduced myself as Chio Duun. He felt I must be a rookie who hadn't awakened long, because few people would walk out of a gate without equipment, so he estimated my equipment was all robbed by others. You look young, but you know quite a lot. Then he got a little angry, saying he was already 17 years old. Just because he's short and malnourished doesn't mean he was a child. Then I looked up and saw a few thugs robbing someone of money. This was already the norm in the slums, because there was this bully in this area. Many people detoured. It turns out that this gang, the Space Gang, had expanded their territory from District 11 to District 13. The police gave up on dealing with them as well. Seeing this, I wanted to know if the District 13 orphanage where I used to live was still here. Meanwhile, the proprietress of the clothing store was bored to death. No sales again today. She felt she must be crazy to open a clothing store in the slums. Just then, the doorbell of the clothing store was rarely pushed open. Obansu greeted the owner but was scolded by her. Don't call me auntie. I'm still very young. I looked around. It was my first time entering a clothing store to buy clothes. At this time, the proprietress asked Obansu to come over. Why did you bring a poor person into the store? Does he look like he can afford clothes? Although I heard their conversation, I didn't say anything, just looked at clothes on the side alone. If you didn't look like my late brother, I wouldn't give you a meal. Next time, please use your eyes. I turned my head and found they were still arguing, so I interrupted them. When they turned around, they were blinded by a golden light because what I handed out was 10 million. Now the proprietress was too shocked to speak, and Obansu had the same expression. With a snap, the proprietress instantly broke the silence. The two began to change their attitude towards me. Obansu immediately served me tea and water and offered a stool. The proprietress claimed she had everything here. As long as it was for children, she could sell it. Upon learning I was buying clothes for a little girl, the proprietress was instantly overjoyed. Her specialty was picking girls' clothes for others, so she constantly introduced the softness and aesthetic of every piece of clothing to me. While I was eating, she had already picked dozens for me. Subsequently, her printer never rested, constantly printing receipts. The proprietress was moved almost to tears. With just one sale, her store had been completely sold out. She had opened the shop for so long and finally made a sale, and once opened, it was a complete sellout. Then the proprietress cried loudly, hoping I would visit again next time. During this period, I also found 2 sets of clothes and handed 1 million to Obansu, thanking him for bringing me to buy clothes. Next, I asked another favor from him. Moments later, we arrived at a clean and decent hotel that I requested. It was nearby a police station and the owner was also very nice. Then I asked him to wait for me at the door for a while. I would come out soon. Watching my retreating back, Obansu felt something was wrong. Who would give him 1 million and buy him new clothes? He worried that I was a bad guy and that he should run away. But then he thought, what if I was just a good person? Like the proprietress, a good person. I had just come out of the hotel and sure enough, as he said, it was indeed clean and the owner seemed nice. I see you've always lived on the street. Live here from now on. I have prepaid 1 year's rent and food expenses for you. However, However, suspicion still lingered in his heart. If I go in there, are you going to kidnap me? But I dismissed this comment, and he continued to ask what my motive was. You just met me for the first time today, but why have you been good to me this whole time? It just reminds me of how things used to be. I used to live like you a long time ago. And finally, I bid him farewell and returned home. At this moment, Kimnari and Nam Jiuk came to pick me up. Kimnari hadn't found me early this morning and didn't know where I went, but when I handed her a big bag of clothes, her eyes instantly lit up. I guess there are none for me in this pile of clothes, right? Instantly, I confirmed this. However, Kimnari over there had already happily picked up the new clothes. While we were chatting happily outside, cracks seemed to multiply on the eggshell inside the room. Looking closely, it seemed like this egg seemed to be shaking slightly. Just after I came back from the human world with a large bag of clothes I bought, Kimnari wore different clothes every day for me to evaluate. Both Ku and I felt they looked very good. However, Kimnari still wanted to try other clothes. A moment later, she encountered a problem, getting confused with overalls. Then, wearing a long-sleeved shirt made her feel like a ghost. Seeing this, I chuckled, feeling that she was so excited. Finally, Kimnari stomped her foot heavily on the ground. She had finally decided on her outfit. She liked this one because there was a chicken on this piece of clothing that looked particularly like Ku. Just then, Ku had a question. Have you never thought about where to place so many clothes? But I had already considered this. For my next project, I was going to build a walk-in wardrobe. However, it meant we will need to get more wood, so I called Nam Jiuk to come over for a moment. Hearing my words, Nam Jiuk exploded with full power and sprinted toward me. Nam Jiuk, am always ready for special training. Then Nam Jiuk respectfully handed the clothes in his hand to me, saying it was my training equipment. He explained somewhat confused. Your outfit was soaked in incredibly potent poison. I almost died when I touched it. I assumed this must be a unique training method. I greatly respect it. However, in reality I was too lazy to wash it. Since you like it so much, then you can wear it. Go ahead. Then go into the forest to chop some wood. But suddenly, Kimnari called from the window for me to go over quickly. There was something wrong with the egg. At this moment, all of us stood in front of this egg. Its movements are getting more violent. It looks like it's about to hatch. Could this not become a disaster-grade monster? But Kimnari was sure it would be a cute monster. Just then, a small corner of the eggshell shattered, and an eye was revealed from the inside. Nam Jiuk was scared half to death, while Kimnari was very excited. The next second, a claw tore open the eggshell, and its tail was sharp and scaly. It even had a small flickering forked tongue. Rather than calling it a monster, it was more like a small snake. Kimnari was incomparably happy. She didn't expect this to actually be a cute little yellow snake. The next second, it disappeared from the cabinet. It leaped up and jumped into midair. It had jumped directly onto Nam Jiuk's face and lay there, and Nam Jiuk let out a miserable scream. At this moment, Nam Jiuk was now hard at work. Wearing the poison training outfit, he was now dragging chopped wood as Ku was bossing him around. I can barely breathe because of this poison. How could Big Bro walk around in this thing? Later, I stretched at the desk after I finished folding all of the clothes. At this time, I heard Kimnari calling me from behind. This creature seems very obedient and gentle. It must know that you are the one who saved it. Kimnari. Just as we were preparing to give it a name, its gaze, however, looked toward the garden. The next moment, its body violently swam over there. Seeing this, Kimnari chased after the snake creature. However, what confused Ku and I was that we've never seen this breed of snake. Ku was sure about one thing. Because it was a monster from the volcanic zone, we must pay close attention to the mandragoras. Most monsters from the volcanic zone treat plant-type monsters as delicacies. They would eat any plants on sight, especially if the plants have strong mana. It will definitely try to dig up and eat the mandragoras. To put it simply, that yellow snake creature, it could be the mandragora's natural enemy. At this moment, all of us watched the creatures in front of us seemingly prepare for a duel. Kimnari wanted to stop them from fighting, but I disagreed. This is the demon realm after all. They might need to establish a pecking order at least once before they quiet down. The three mandragoras were slowly sizing up the little yellow snake before them. Soon, a killing intent appeared on this little snake's face. This made the mandragora pause for a moment, and exactly during that moment of distraction, the little snake attacked with its claw. But with a snap, a tree branch interrupted its attack. The bigger mandragora had actually blocked the attack. Immediately after, the second mandragora moved rapidly. It smashed the wooden stick in its hand ruthlessly onto the little snake's body. However, even the snake creature could block attacks with its tail. At this moment, the third mandragora had already rushed up. The arm of this third mandragora condensed power, and the mandragora punched heavily onto its face. Despite the punch not being strong, the little snake seemed to feel as if it had suffered a massive grievance. Kimnari immediately went up to comfort it. The little snake must have been shocked to get hit for the first time in its life. Nam Jiuk and Ku were also shocked by this performance. This battle was strangely satisfying to watch. Meanwhile, above the sea surface on the other side, a large bird was flying quickly close to the surface. Looking closely, he actually possessed a human body. It possessed wings on its back, and his head was an eagle's.